Welcome, everyone, to the Apex Sunday podcast, where myself, Robert Ross, and John Dowsett discuss Formula One races. Today, we're talking about the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix. And, John, before we start, we had a couple of interesting and new and old drivers, in the sense, back in Formula One this year. We had Mazepin's replacement, which would be Kevin Magnussen, which really surprised me. But, you know, he was with them before, and he did a spectacular job. And then we had Vettel out with COVID, so Nico Hulkenberg substituted for him. It was nice to see him back in the sport.
He did well in qualifying, not so hot in the race, but that's pretty impressive to hop back in a car after all that time away.
Absolutely. And apparently Vettel may not make the next race either. So
really,
yeah. And we had Daniel had COVID the week before, so he missed the tests at Bahrain. So he's 200 laps down on Lando for this particular course. And then I had a different commentary team for this race. I had Ben Edwards and Jolyon Palmer, who follows in his father's footsteps, an ex-F1 driver turned commentator. Not a very good F1 driver, but nonetheless a fairly good commentator. And then Ben Edwards, he used to be on the Channel 4, used to do BBC, and he's on the Formula One podcast for the Crash.net site. But I understand you had the Martin Brundle Sky commentary.
I had the Screamers. I had Duddy Kravitz and the usual team of Screamers, and thank God for the mute button. As soon as you see those red lights come on at the beginning of the race, it's hit the mute button. And as soon as there's some wicked passing going on, you hit the mute button. And yeah. But today's show is brought to you by Rayovac, making batteries for decades.
Well, I really enjoyed the alternate commentary, and I'm not sure how I got it because it comes up with this switch the channel for different commentaries, but I couldn't see where that channel is. But
this is on F1 TV, right?
Yes, on F1 TV. So I have to tell you, the commentary was way, way better and less. I mean, Ben got excited, but not screaming excited. And I did see a clip from the F1 channel on YouTube with Crofty screaming at the start. And it's like, oh, glad I missed that. So
yeah,
I have to investigate that to put you on some proper commentary, as it were.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into qualifying for this first race of the new era, using the same engines, but new aerodynamics. All right, so in my statements in the season review, I kind of pooped on Haas and Alfa Romeo, saying, why are they in F1? Like, what are they doing? And then, boom, they did spectacularly well. Like, qualifying was shocking to me to see. I think Schumacher was in 12th, which was probably his best, and Kevin Magnussen up in the top 10. I think it was 7th. And then Valtteri 6th in the Alfa Romeo. Incredible.
Yes. Brilliant.
Are you surprised by that?
Yes. The whole thing was amazing. I loved quali because it was exactly what we expected, which was a major shakeup. What I wasn't expecting was the teams to be as close as they were. I was expecting a way bigger gap from first to last. It was nice. Now, maybe if Mazepin was in there, we would have had that big gap still. But wow, like really tight, and Ferrari having it together.
Yeah,
wonderful
that was a bit of a surprise. And Mercedes on the back foot. I noticed in qualifying they were porpoising a fair amount, and they removed that for the race, so they had to put the ride height up. And they, at one point before that safety car came out, they were almost 30 seconds behind the top two teams, as it were. So
they were still porpoising in the race.
Were they? Just not as bad, I guess.
No.
Yeah, it was a big surprise to see that because I thought Mercedes would do well, a lot better than they did. I mean, they qualified all right, but during the race, not so well.
Well, they qualified just all right, and you know what? That it's a fundamental problem, and
Yeah.
God knows how if they'll ever get it back this year. It could be that bad.
Yeah, I'm reminded of, I think it was Benetton in 1995 after Shuey won the championship in 94, again, under controversial circumstances in the last race. They were nowhere for the first three races, and then they found their footing and he went on to win that championship. Or was it Damon? I can't remember exactly. But anyways, he started winning races again with Benetton. So,
It
very
used to be
interesting.
a lot more common. I mean, it used to be way more common when I first started watching races before television. They
Mhm.
had they would start the season with last year's car.
Yeah.
Many teams would because they wouldn't have it ready. And if the new car wasn't that great, guess what? They'd come out with last year's car and they'd be faster.
Yeah.
And they'd make changes race to race to race. I'm listening to Rush to Glory right now, which is the movie that Rush was based on,
Right.
and they're talking about how James Hunt would move the rear radiators by an inch, and the car would be undrivable,
Right.
and that sort of thing, from day to day, and new cars coming in mid season and that sort of stuff. So it used to change a lot back then.
Right.
Um, Now we don't see that much, and they've kind of regulated it out, haven't they?
Hmm. Yeah. Hamilton was 6/10 off pole, and Russell was a second behind Hamilton in qualifying. So, if they don't find their feet, it's going to be disappointing for Russell moving from Williams to Mercedes, the all
Yes.
conquering Mercedes, and not being there. But I have a fair amount of confidence in their engineers. I don't know how the budget cap will affect how much they can develop the car, but everyone's talking about the key to success this season is car development. It's going to be changing throughout the entire season, so we'll see how that goes. But
Without spending money,
yeah.
like they've got a tight budget, right? I mean, that's another thing with qualifying. I was expecting Russell to be closer,
Hmm.
um, because quite clearly what this qualifying was all about was how fast can a driver get accustomed to a completely new ride, because
Right.
that's what it is. They're
Yep.
driving basically completely new cars,
Hmm.
and the true drivers are going to be able to hop on it quickly,
Right.
hopefully. And
Right.
watching Hamilton slaughter Russell the way he did kind of surprised me a bit.
Yeah, because Russell was known as a Saturday man, right? Top
Also surprised
qualifier.
me with science.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Leclerc got another pole. He got two last season, so I wasn't too
Yes.
surprised to see him there. And then the McLarens were very, very bad,
Oh,
weren't they?
horrific.
Yeah,
Horrific.
they're
And the Williams.
in the Williams. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Haas has really surprised me. I mean, there's Dalara's still building their chassis, but they went with their own design this time rather than Dalara's. So I don't know what that says about Dalara's design capabilities in regards to Formula One. I mean, they're a great chassis manufacturer for a lot of series, right?
Yes.
But I was frankly quite shocked. And same with Alfa Romeo. I could not believe it. It's like, what is Bottas doing up in six? This was just incredible.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And the
So
Alpines, I expected more from the Alpines.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we talked about that previously, where the new engine formula, if they don't get the engine correct, they have no other cars using their engines. So see how it goes. Apparently, they're pretty happy with the engine, so maybe it's just the chassis. But
Yes.
this is only one race, the first race of the season. I remember years ago, I think it was David Coulthard winning the first race in Australia in a McLaren, and what's going on here. And then I don't think he won a race after that. So we'll see how it goes. But
We can also go back to Jensen Button's winning season where they came out with a car that was in a completely different league,
mhm,
and they couldn't develop it. But he took a huge lead right off the start. By the end of the season, he was midfield, but he'd
yeah.
won enough races to win the championship.
Yeah, they had developed that rear diffuser, and then the other teams caught up. And if he
Yes,
hadn't had that gap, he would have lost that championship. So
absolutely.
yeah. Anything else about qualifying?
Ferrari won too. Fantastic. When was the last time we saw that?
Wasn't that the race? Wasn't Max in second place?
Ah, you're right. One
Right.
three,
1-3.
but
Yeah,
still
but
one
still very,
three. When
very
was the
good.
last time we saw 1-3?
Yeah, and also Carlos had trouble throughout the weekend, and he just
Right.
improved and improved throughout the whole weekend. So, hopefully that's the case that we get these two guys fighting for the championship. And
Hmm.
Red Bull, not too surprising, they still did well in terms of qualifying and their car. Overall, seeing the cars in action, what do you think of the look of them before
Love
we move
them.
on to the race?
Love
Yeah.
them. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think they're
thought they
great.
looked pretty good. I like the simplified look for sure. So
Hmm.
they are heavier this year. And I looked at the comparison of times from last year's race to this, and it averaged between 1.5 to 2.5 seconds slower. But that's no big deal to me. You know,
No,
you can't really see that difference in
no,
speed and so forth. So,
and they're
yeah.
harder to drive. It's more of a driver's car, which I really like.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the race. So for the race, it started out with Bottas having another terrible, terrible start, having qualified sixth. He dropped down way, way back. I mean, afterwards he did recover, which was a little different than last season. Um, Schumacher was spun out by Ocon briefly. He spun right around and continued on. Ocon received a 5-second penalty for that. I thought that was just a bit of an incident, but I'm not going to harp on penalties quite yet. I mean, we didn't see a slew of them this race.
I don't think that we can give any hard time for that penalty. I could either way it went, I would be fine with it.
Right, right.
Did he belong there? Did his car belong there? No, it didn't belong there, but it was the start. So
Yes. Yeah.
anyway,
I don't know if that is a precursor or sort of a, what's to come about penalizations this season because of all the controversy last season, but we'll see. The other thing was the pit stops were slower in general, and they've
mhm,
changed the tire warming rules. So we saw them coming out of the pits sliding around quite a lot. That was
mhm,
nice to see. And apparently, in your commentary, you had mentioned that they said they might not have tire warmers at all next season.
yes,
That's kind of
yeah,
like IndyCar, right?
yeah.
Montoya was a master of driving on cold tires. So again, moving the cars back to the drivers is a better step. I agree with you completely there.
It's not fun driving on cold tires, and
I can imagine.
it's not fun at all. And the other thing they're saying is with these bigger rims, uh, for whatever reason it is, they aren't getting as much heat out of the rims going into the tires
Right,
as
right,
quickly.
right. So we
Hmm.
saw, a little bit of that on the track. And then we had a fairly interesting battle between Leclerc and Verstappen. And my only comment about that was clean, which was nice. So I have more than one comment. And I thought Verstappen's racecraft was a little off again. Like, why was he lunging and locking his brakes into the first corner when there's another DRS zone after the second where Leclerc came by
That's
him
his
again?
style. That's his style. I mean, he did that all season long last year. It's unpredictable. You don't know where he's going to come from. That's part of his strategy. You know what? That was the best dicing that we've seen in a long time. When was the last time we saw the back forth, back forth, back forth, back forth?
At the very
And
front.
it's
Yeah.
good to see Charles Leclerc getting his elbows out and just saying, "No, I'm going for it. You know,
Yeah.
you're going to do it. I'm going to do it too."
Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
was really good to see.
And Lewis has mentioned that he's going to be more aggressive this season. And Lando was in the news talking about all the other drivers agree that Max is too aggressive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So, but we'll talk about Max's race in a moment. We had a good battle between Magnussen and Gasly while Gasly lasted. Again, Magnussen very, very impressive. He kind of let cars by that he knew he couldn't really race, and got the maximum amount of points, especially with the Red Bulls falling out. He got fifth. I mean, Haas is probably, well, they did score more points than they did all last season because they scored zero last season.
Right.
So, and then the Mazepin's removal was not a surprise because, his dad's good buddies with Putin. So, he can't really.
Hey, he's gone. Let's not talk about him.
Right.
Enough is enough. He's gone. Shouldn't have been there in the first place. Correct.
Right. And we
Not
saw
that
sorry.
It wasn't nice having the money. I mean, if I was running Haas, I would have done the same thing. I would have had the young Russian in there.
Yeah. But getting Magnussen back gives Schumacher a better teammate to gauge himself against. And, he didn't score any points, but he came close to scoring points. He got spun out. I think he improved a little bit. And again, it's a whole new car. But Magnussen, he's been a year off, and same with Hulkenberg, just hopping into a completely alien car. Very, very impressive. But speaking of bad performances, the Aston Martins and the McLarens, the Williams. Wow.
Yes.
I mean,
somebody's got to be there. Somebody's got to be off the back. Who's it going to be? Right. I mean, it's just different than it was last year.
Right.
And so that's who it is. I'm kind of surprised it's Aston Martin, considering the effort that they're putting into it and the team that they have.
Yeah, that may be sort of last year was hiring a bunch of people, but they couldn't do anything for this year's car. So,
right.
But I hope they improve, because they were sadly pretty bad in performance. And
yes,
Mercedes, again, a surprise. We talked already briefly about the porpoising. Will they solve that or not? Lewis got a podium because of the Red Bulls, but he's again taking the maximum out of the car that he has. That's what Lewis does. So, bit of a surprise podium. But the Red Bulls, quick car, but I'm wondering about, it's so rare to see reliability issues. I mean, it's a whole new formula in terms of the car itself. I mean, we spoke in the review about, how in qualifying, you can't count on cars dropping out of a race, but perhaps that's going to change this year, at least in the initial few races. And I have to say, my opinion of Red Bull's management, that, that brought a smile to my face.
my theory my theory is made me think immediately when they started going out and all the Honda engines started dying. Immediately took me back down to they're trying to copy Mercedes' strategy of last year, only they don't know how to do it.
Right.
And what Mercedes did was they created an engine that had a shorter lifespan, so they're going to take penalties, but they'd get way more horsepower by doing that.
Right.
And Red Bull doesn't know how to do that with their Honda engine. They did it with the Honda engine and they overdid it. So they've got it too much on the gnarly edge of performance. AKA Colin Chapman, who designed every car to finish the race, and that's it. It should just completely fall apart. That's what happened with the Honda engine. And the only person that finished with Honda was Yuki.
Right. Yeah, and he came up from 16th into the points.
Great drive. And the new Chinese driver, Joe, did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't he get in the points in his in his very first race? Yeah, 10th.
10th, yep. Yeah, for the Alfa Romeo, and
kept his nose clean.
Yeah, because he's sort of another guy who probably unfairly was criticized. Oh, he's a pay driver and all that. I mean, there are a lot of pay drivers in Formula One right now. That's just the reality of the sport. But it doesn't matter if you deliver. And in his first race, he delivered, and that was nice. I mean, you can say, well, the Red Bulls dropped out. Well, that's not his problem. That's Red Bull's problem. So
right. And you know what? He kept his nose clean. That's the big one. Like, if you don't want to piss off the rest of the drivers, which you can, and first impressions count. If in the first race you come out and you get your elbows out, you're not gonna get much love in the pits.
No. No, again, Mazepin last year wasn't too well liked by Mick because he would almost take him out, right? So
or anybody. I think pretty much everybody was laughing at him and just not paying any attention to him because he was such an incredible back marker.
Mhm.
But now, like you said, I look forward to what's going to happen with Mick Schumacher now that he's got,
Proper
a
teammate.
senior journeyman driver
Yeah.
who's proven. I mean, he's a good driver.
Mhm. Yeah, and we saw on now it's an Oracle branded Red Bull car. Sometimes teams put their sponsor before them and sometimes after, but whatever. And the only evidence of Honda is there's an HRC logo sort of behind the rear wheel for the Honda Racing Corporation. So Honda's still actually building the engines, but Red Bull's paying for them and I
Right.
guess developing them in the future. So I don't know.
And they'd be directing Honda on how to build the engines, and it worked so well for Mercedes last year. If they can take that edge away from Mercedes, that's what they were trying to do. I swear that's what it looked
Mhm.
like.
Right.
Big question is what's going to happen in race 2. They're going to have new engines, and do they have time to produce an engine with slightly more forgiving tolerances?
Right.
And if they're able to do that, it looks like it puts out tons of power. Doesn't look like anything's going to touch the Ferrari powered cars. And I think that comes back down to us talking about the disappointment of Aston Martin, because Aston Martin has got what driving the wheels.
Mhm.
They've got the Mercedes, and none of the Mercedes cars did well. Where did
No.
Williams end up? Right. So
Yeah.
the Mercedes power plant, they took the other, I think they took the other approach after what happened last year and went, well, that worked close to
Right.
getting us the championship, but how about we get a little bit more reliable? Because if we didn't have those big grid penalties, maybe we would have done better.
Done one. Yeah. They're saying that the fuel pump was the issue with the Red Bulls and the MGUHK for AlphaTauri for Gasly. But I've also learned that the fuel pump is now a standard part across every team, so they don't produce their own. And so getting standard parts to work with your custom parts can be an issue, right? So
Who provided that information?
it was on a podcast, either the race or Driver 61.
I guess what I'm saying is, if that information came from Red Bull, it's
Oh, right.
meaningless.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll see what they do in the second race, right? So,
Mhm.
and then we had the safety car. It looks like it was properly deployed this time, and that allowed Valtteri to catch up, Lewis to catch up, um, Magnussen to catch up, and so forth. And then we had the Red Bulls. First off, we'll go start with Perez at the last lap. He just spun when his engine cut out, and that was a surprise. But Max had some problems beforehand with his steering. Now, again, Red Bull's reporting that when they dropped the car in the second pit stop, that broke one of the rods that controls the steering or cracked it. So that may be a factor. But Max was not a happy camper through the last half of that race, was he?
No, no. And I think it was more than likely a hydraulic problem.
Hmm.
Again, I don't believe anything that comes out of the Red Bull
Right.
pit. I don't. There's no reason to believe it. Um,
I will say
I
that
believe
Max
stuff that comes.
should have been a bit calmer. Like if his temperament is such that, like if Lewis was in that situation, he'd be pissed, but he wouldn't be, swearing and screaming and so forth. So, if they're
I
going to have
can't say that.
troubles,
I
no,
can't say that. I think that's what has put Max where he is.
that's
That's
true.
why
Yeah.
he's up front, because he does have that red mist, and he does have that nasty way of doing it. James Hunt had the same thing.
Right.
Reading this book, it reminded me. There was one race where James Hunt uh, tapped the wall, and his car wasn't that damaged, but he got taken out by Patrick Depailler. And because he got taken out, he parked his car. He got out of the car, stood in the middle of the track, and waved his fist at
Yeah. I remember that seeing that.
Depailler for 3 laps until the big burly American marshals hauled him off the track.
Right. Right.
Hunt was a brilliant driver.
Mhm.
He was a deserving champion. more so than Max. I think if you take that away from Max, I think you
Well,
take away his competitiveness.
it just may be a problem for him this season if they continue to have issues. But again, a sample of one race does not make for
Right.
conclusions, right? So I'm fairly confident in Red Bull's engineers, so they'll probably be fine and be competitive. But it's nice to see Ferrari competitive again. It's unfortunate, at least again, first race, so we'll see that we still have only two top two teams, depending based on this race, rather
I don't
than
think we will. I think we'll end up with 4 teams. I don't
I
think
hope
we will.
so.
I think we'll end up with 4 teams. I
Right.
That's what it's kind of looking like to me. I'm hoping that it will be that way. Can
Mhm.
AlphaTauri uh, gear up a bit? Absolutely. I mean, they have the same power plant. There really are 4 Red Bull cars.
Right.
Um, they should be up front. Uh,
But it is disappointing to see Alpine, McLaren, Aston Martin suffer quite a lot. Williams, I'm not too surprised about, but they did improve last season, and so at least in this first race, they dropped back. Albon did drive very well, though, didn't he, for a return driver as well?
Absolutely. You know what? You're right. It's the first race.
Mhm.
What's going to come? But at the same time, we've got to remember they're back markers. We can
Yeah.
go back as far as Vanwall or BRM, March, that had brilliant cars that beat everybody, that Lotus that became back markers. And
Right.
who's going to be out front? It's going to change. And especially it's going to change in times like this when we've got a new formula, which we
Mhm.
have. We have a new formula.
Yeah. Anything else about this race you'd like to say?
Yes.
Mhm.
Track limits.
Mm.
Fantastic. They've changed the rule, and now track limits are track limits. It's not
Right.
if you get an advantage on corner 3, and at this track it's corner 4.
Right.
Now it's track limits. So you get
Right.
4 wheels over the line, you get a penalty. You get a
Right.
flag. You get a warning. You get 2 warnings, and then you get a flag, and then you get a penalty. And that's the way it should be.
Mhm. That's how it was in MotoGP last season. That just they got rid of the confusion basically, and
Yes.
so and for instance, during qualifying or something, that lap's gone. Like they know instantly, and then so
Yes.
now we know, right? So that's good. Who would be your driver of the race?
That's a really tough one. And we did this every race last year,
Mhm.
and you can look at it, and it's really easy to say that Chaz Leclerc was the driver of the race because he got pole, he won the race, he drove flawlessly.
Yep.
It
And
doesn't
he
really
competed
work for
against
me
Max so
though,
well as well, right?
because he had the best car.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of hard to say. Max drove very well. Um, Carlos Sainz struggled.
Mhm.
Lewis, I Lewis did incredibly well. Valtteri Bottas ended up finishing 6th.
Yep.
Um,
Magnussen was fifth.
Magnussen was 5th. I mean, maybe I've got to say it's Magnussen.
I agree. For me, it's Magnussen. I mean, he's only been a year out, but the formula's completely changed, and he just shows up a week before, gets integrated back into
Unbelievable.
the team,
Yes.
puts them in the points right off the bat. Just spectacular. So
And
good on
slaughters
Kevin.
his teammate.
Yep.
Slaughters his teammate
Yep.
who's been driving the car. Well, it's a new car, right?
Yeah.
But still. And he was booked to do an IndyCar race
Hmm.
when he found out and had to fly over. So, yeah, he's not had any testing at all. This was trial by fire. Yeah, it's got to be Magnuson.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really happy to see him do so well and
Mhm.
just so shocked, basically. Like, I really didn't think Haas would take such a big step, but it looks like they have. So hopefully, again, just one race. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see how it goes. And how would you rate this race? I'm going to give it, I'll let you know, I was going to give it a 6 because there were some interesting things and some good passes, but overall it seemed kind of low key to me. I don't know if maybe I was in a bad mood or something. once the Red Bulls dropped out, I popped it up to a 7 because that delighted me to no end. What about you?
I think we have to like put this on a scale
Hmm.
because it's got. I give it an 11 out of 10, just because number one is dying for the season to start again.
Right.
Number two, we've got a brand new car. Number three, we've got people that are not where we are expecting them to be, so it makes it more exciting. All of that kind of goes away really quickly.
It does.
If we factor all of that in there, I'd give it a 5.
Right.
Uh, and simply the highlights for me were the dicing, and that was all over within 3 minutes to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The proper dicing between the two leaders.
Hmm.
That was wonderful for me. I loved seeing that.
Yeah. And we saw some dicing between Magnussen and Gasly and so forth.
Yes.
But yeah, not as much as I expected or wanted, I guess. But overall, they are saying that the cars are easier to follow, but they're still hard to pass. Which
And harder to drive.
oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
and
the other
that's going to make for more mistakes and more possibilities throughout the season, right? So that's really
possibly,
good. Hmm.
yes. Uh, the other thing was the coverage sucked. Um, so that takes it down a notch. There were a couple of periods where there was some incredible dicing going on, and they're showing a driver getting out of his car
Yeah, yeah.
while the dicing's going on.
Hmm.
No, no. Who's
Yeah.
directing this thing? Go to camera 3. Go to Larry in the pits. No, no. We're here to watch racing.
I like that they did show a little bit more of the helmet cam footage, but not enough, or maybe not selectively. I didn't check to see if you can just turn on the helmet cam throughout the race. I think
I
it was
don't
on
like it.
Guan Yu's. You don't like it? No.
No, I shouldn't say that. I really like seeing that perspective.
Mm.
I don't really think there's much place for it on an ongoing basis or on an extended period.
I will.
I really don't.
I will say that I think it would work better in a daylight. I thought the evening it just didn't look as good and it was harder to see things and so forth. So overall, I never really thought about it before, but I don't think I'm a fan of these night races. I kind of like a daytime race.
It
I don't
makes
know.
me think about skiing, and I I'm not a huge fan of night skiing,
Hmm.
but for the skier, the light's better.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's the same thing for the drivers. Those
Mhm.
guys have even consistent light for the
Yeah.
whole damn track. There's no tunnel at Monaco where it goes dark and then you come out into the bright sunshine again.
Right.
And if it's a gloomy day, no, there's nice, solid, bright light where you can see the entire track. So for the driver, I think it's a great thing. For me, I just think they're making a spectacle out of it. It's the Britney Spears thing. I mean, let's have Britney Spears at during red flags. It's like, no, this isn't an NBA basketball game.
So what is the reasoning behind it? Is it because it's so hot in the desert that they need night races? Because Qatar is the same, even for MotoGP. It's in the evening. Is that why? Like,
More consistent, maybe.
right.
I don't know.
Might be
I don't
just too
like it.
hot. Yeah, me neither. So, and the next race is the Saudi race. Is that a night race? I think it is, isn't it?
I don't know if I want to watch it. I know I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, I had the same thought. It was like, well, they just publicly executed over 100 people. What is F1 doing going to that country? I mean, you can draw all kinds of different lines. I mean, we've got some wing nuts in our own country, wing nuts to the south of us in the States and so forth. But, these are very, very terrible things that the Saudi government does. And, money again trumps everything.
Right.
So very unfortunate. I've seriously thought about not watching it, but I probably will as well. So
My take on it is this. It's like artists. One of
Mhm.
my favorite filmmakers is Woody Allen.
Right.
Love Roman Polanski's work.
Yep.
these are both very evil people,
Yeah.
from what we understand, but their art is beautiful. So
Right.
these drivers that are doing this race, it's their job to boycott it. But
Yeah.
it's not. It's their job to race. If the
Yeah.
big boys upstairs say, we're going to Qatar, we're going to Saudi Arabia, we're going to Nepal, they're going to Nepal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Sebastian Vettel's definitely a bit more vocal about these things these days.
Mhm.
And I think that's great to see. Other people are like, oh, he's just a driver. He should shut up. It's like, why?
Mhm.
Like, he's a person too. I mean, we all
Yes.
live in the same world. So why not
Yes.
try to, call out some terrible things? He's got
Mhm.
the platform. Go ahead and do it. So
I
good for
agree.
him. Yeah. All right. So that's the next race in Saudi. And I have nothing in news. Do you have anything in news for the start of the season?
Nothing at all other than welcome back, everybody. And this is our second year of doing our podcast.
Yeah. And if you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. And if you dislike it, hit that dislike button too. So whatever speak out, whatever your opinion is, that's your opinion. All right,
Yes.
John. So we'll talk next time about the Saudi race.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye bye.